meantime, Sanatana Goswami is still in Vrindavan and he's going around to the different places. He finished his tour of Vrindavan and he decided, okay, now I should go to Puri. At least if I go to Puri, I'll be able to see Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So he went through the Joraikanda forest. There's no freshwater wells. There's no running tap water. Lions and tigers and deer. They're all there together and dancing, and elephants. And as a result of drinking many days of impure water, he got infection. Sores on his body. Plus, he didn't directly want to go before Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he didn't want to go to the temple to take darshan of Lord Jagannath. Maybe one of the pujaris might accidentally bump into him and they would be contaminated, and then he'd commit a great offense. Sanatana conceived this idea then that he would leave his body. Mahaprabhu came, and he came to know that Sanatana was thinking that I'm going to commit suicide. I should throw myself underneath the cart of Lord Jagannath. This would be a suitable end for me. So Mahaprabhu came before him, and he said, my dear Sanatana, if I could attain Krishna simply by committing suicide, then I would have given up millions of bodies without a moment's hesitation. But I cannot attain Krishna simply by committing suicide. Only through the process of developing bhajan. Therefore, there is no other means but the process of devotional service to attain Krishna. So this is stated in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So in this way, Mahaprabhu gave very clear instructions to Sanatana Goswami that this idea of suicide was in the mode of ignorance. It was an act of ignorant thinking like that. So he said, you have already surrendered yourself to me, Sanatana. Your body belongs to me. It is my personal property. Why do you want to destroy another's property? Are you unable to distinguish what is right and what is wrong? He says, your body is an important instrument of mine through which I shall accomplish many great things. So here again, the Lord gives a very practical instruction that this body belongs to Him. We can only use it in the service of the Lord. So in this way, Sanatana Goswami stayed in Puri through the Rath Yatra period, through the Chaturmasya period, and then through the very hot time. And then there was this wonderful story. Just after the Rath Yatra period, it's like now, it's the hottest time of the year. Now, Sanatana Goswami was living a distance away, and he wanted to go and visit Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But he didn't want to go by the main road, because he thought, if I go by the main road, I'll have to pass the Simhadvara gate, which is the main gate into the temple of Jagannath Puri. And if I pass by that gate, some of the pujaris might accidentally touch me. He was thinking like this still. This isn't good, that they'll become contaminated. I'm such a low birth. I've engaged in the service of Muslims. I have these sorts of... So I'll go by way of the seashore. Now, walking on the seashore is a very, how shall you say, wonderful thing at the right time of day. Anybody that's had the opportunity to go to the beach, I don't know if you live on the West Coast or if you live on the... Florida or in Europe, wherever. If you go to the beach at the right time of day, it's very nice. But at a certain point, the sun becomes too strong and the sand becomes very hot. So this was in the latter part of the day at lunchtime. And Sanatana Goswami walked. And it describes that at that time of day, the sand is just completely burning. Very hot. So what would happen is that Sanatana Goswami, by the time he got to Mahaprabhu, his feet were covered in blisters. In this way, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said to Sanatana, he said, my dear Sanatana, he said, you're arriving here this late in the day. Which way did you come? And he said, I do not have the right to pass by the Simhadwara gate. The servants of Jagannath are always coming and going. So I have gone by way of the beach. And so Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was respecting this very much. And he appreciated not only his humility, but his selflessness. And he said to him, my dear Sanatana, you can save the entire universe, even the demigods and the great sages are purified by touching you. Nevertheless, it is the characteristic of a devotee to observe Vaishnava etiquette. Maintenance of Vaishnava etiquette is the ornament of a devotee. One who transgresses the rules of behavior becomes a laughingstock and is lost both in this world and the next. By observing these rules of etiquette, you have brought me great satisfaction. Who else but you will set this standard for the rest of the world? So this is a very important point. As we live in our particular temples, as we live in our particular communities, we have to be specifically conscious of Vaishnava etiquette, of respecting Vaishnavas, of always considering the well-being of Vaishnavas. These are the activities that Sanatana Goswami taught us by this example. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, of course, embraced Sanatana to his chest. He was so happy to see such a wonderful mood, and Sanatana became very uncomfortable again because he still had these sores and they were oozing pus and was on and he was just so dissatisfied with this. So when he left this condition, he went back to the Siddha tree. Now, as I mentioned, this area where Haridas Thakur's Siddha tree is, it's a nice area. Near there is the temple of Jagadananda Pandit. Jagadananda Pandit also lived in that same area. And Jagadananda Pandit was considerably younger. So what happened was that Sanatana Goswami saw that Jagadananda Pandit was there and he began to reveal his mind. We know from Rupa Goswami's Upadeshamrita, one of these 6 symptoms of loving exchanges is to reveal your mind to someone. And then the other person shows their love for you by hearing you reveal your mind. This is a symptom of appreciation between devotees. So Sanatana said to Jagadananda, he said, I'm thinking I should simply leave Puri. I mean, this just isn't, I'm here and I'm touching the Lord and I'm, and then I have to be careful not to walk near where the pujaris are like this. So, he just didn't want to do this. He wanted to leave. So Jagadananda heard and he said, yes, this is actually probably a good idea. He wasn't telling him you should get out of Puri. He said, yeah, I understand what you're saying, what your feeling is, so this is a good idea. So, in this way, Sanatana Goswami was staying in Siddha and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to visit with him. And Sanatana couldn't hold it back anymore. He blurted out what his distress was. And that, all he was doing by staying in Puri was committing offenses. Committing offenses to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, committing offenses by going near the pujaris and, just contaminating everything in this way. So he said that he told Mahaprabhu, he said, I've discussed with Jagadananda Pandit and we've agreed that he has given me his permit, that I'm going to ask you for your permission for me to leave Puri. And in this way he presented his idea before Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Excuse me. So you can imagine what Mahaprabhu's reaction was. He became completely angry. Now, did he become angry with Sanatana because Sanatana was thinking to leave Puri? No. He became angry because Jagadananda Pandit had agreed to instruct Sanatana Goswami. So Mahaprabhu said, Jagadananda, he is a newcomer, just a young boy. Yet, he is so proud that he thinks he can instruct you and give you advice. You are his guru in every respect, both by material and spiritual terms. Yet he dares to give you his advice? Doesn't he know his own worth? You are my teacher. You are my authority. And yet, like an impudent child, Jagadananda is giving instructions to someone as qualified as you. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is placing Sanatana Goswami as his own authority, as the person he turns to. And then he says, and this Jagadananda Pandit, who is junior to all of us, dares to give you his advice? So Sanatana Goswami was very upset by this. Now, why was Sanatana Goswami upset? Because he saw Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was giving his mercy of chastising Jagadananda, but all he ever does is glorify me. This is the same mood that we saw in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's relationship with Advaita Acharya. That Advaita Acharya had to go out and publicly preach Mayavadi philosophy to get the Lord to be angry with him. And then he was very happy to get that. So in the same way, Sanatana Goswami is thinking like this. So what happened was that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said to Sanatana Goswami, he said, from this day forward, I forbid anyone to look upon your body as being material. He says, you take your body to be disgusting, whereas I take your body to be like nectar. Your body is transcendental and never material, but you conceive of it in material terms. So he was here again instructing Sanatana Goswami in this way. So Haridas Thakur, he objected that, my dear Lord, you're exaggerating this a bit. Everybody's body is material. You're making a little bit much of this point. Haridas Thakur was saying like this. So the Lord laughed and explained himself to Sanatana. He said, my dear Haridas, my dear Sanatana, I think of the two of you as my adopted children, and of myself as your maintainer. The maintainer never takes seriously any of the faults of the maintained. I never think of myself as deserving of respect, but because of affection, I always consider you to be like my little boys. Even when a child passes stool and urine upon the body of the mother, she never hates the child. On the contrary, she simply cleanses this and is very satisfied to continue loving the child. Similarly, I feel no disgust at being touched by the oozing pus coming from the sores on your body. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then went on to explain to both Sanatana and Haridas how the body of the devotee is never material. That the devotee's body is always spiritual. And that the spiritual nature of the devotee's body is what another devotee, another person should always see. So in this way, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu once again embraced Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sanatana Goswami very nicely. So, after staying in Jagannath Puri for 1 year, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instructed Sanatana, it's time for you now to return to Vrindavan. So, he said, as a matter of fact, take that Jagadananda with you. So, actually, Jagadananda went to Mahaprabhu and begged permission that you please, may I go to Vrindavan, And Mahaprabhu said, yes, the two of you go and tour together the 12 forests of Vrindavan. And so they arrived there and went to all the different holy places in Vrindavan. Now, this is an interesting point, is that Sanatana Goswami, he lived and maintained himself as far as eating by madhukari. Madhukari means that one goes from door to door and simply begs. And whatever one's given, that's what he eats. So, in this way, Sanatana Goswami will get a couple of roti one day, maybe a little bit of sabji the next day, like that. So he encouraged Jagadananda, you come with me, we'll do this madhukari together. So, the interesting thing was that Jagadananda couldn't do that. Jagadananda was one of those devotees that had to have rice and dal every day. So he would go to different temples, because generally outside of the temples, rice and dal was not cooked regularly. So, he requested Jagadananda, you come and we'll do madhukari together. But Jagadananda Pandit was not very eager to do that. He would go regularly and cook, chapati, rice and dal in the different temples and offer that nicely to the deities, and then he would take the prasad in this way. So, one day he invited Sanatana, you come to the temple here and we'll take prasadam together. So Sanatana, despite the exchanges that had taken place in Puri, Sanatana understood that Jagadananda Pandit was a highly devoted follower of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So what he wanted to do was he wanted to show that extreme devotion that Jagadananda Pandit had for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So when he was invited, Sanatana was invited by Jagadananda to come for lunch. What he did was he took the turban cloth that had been given to him by one certain sannyasi named Mukunda Saraswati. Now, Mukunda Saraswati was a Mayavadi sannyasi. He wore a very dark red cloth. And so he took that and he tied it around his head, and then he went to see Jagadananda Pandit. So Jagadananda Pandit saw that he was coming with this colorful cloth. He said, "Oh," he said, "where have you received that cloth from?" And Sanatan, with a big smile, said, "Oh, this was a gift to me by Mukunda Saraswati." And Jagadananda Pandit became very much upset. He said, "You are the most intimate associate of Mahaprabhu. There is no one more important or dear to him. How could you tolerate wearing the cloth of another sannyasi around your head? How is this possible?" And Jagadananda Pandit was speaking in anger. Now, Jagadananda Pandit, we might point out here, is understood to be an incarnation of Satyabhama. So there's always this rasa of arguing. So in this way, Sanatan began to praise the dedication that Jagadananda Pandit had for Gauranga Mahaprabhu by his showing that this love that he had was sparked simply by seeing a colored cloth that was worn by some other sannyasi. So it mentions that Jagadananda Pandit stayed in Vrindavan with Sanatana Goswami for 2 months. And then after that time, he just simply couldn't tolerate the separation from Mahaprabhu any longer. So he begged permission from Sanatan that, I can go back now. And Sanatan sent some presents with him. Now, it's very interesting that Sanatan sent these gifts to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He sent with him some sand from the Rasa dance, the place where Krishna and the gopis had the Rasa dance, a Govardhan Shila from Govardhan Hill, a garland of kunja berries, which is little red and white berries that are used in the worship of Govardhan, and some dried ripe pilu fruit. Pilu fruit are mentioned in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. They're very, very sweet, but the seed is quite hot. And so generally the devotees that eat pilu, they spit it out, the seed. But there's one time where the new devotees were eating it, didn't know, and they ate the seed, and very, very hot in their mouth. This is like that. So at any rate, Jagadananda Pandit, he returned to Jagannath Puri, and Sanatana Goswami stayed, and at this point really began to develop his practice of devotion and his worship of the deity and everything in Vrindavan. So at the time, Sanatan was living in just a little hut made out of leaves, and so he was staying at a place called Mahaban, and this is near Krishna's pastimes there. And so one day he was walking on the banks of the Jamuna, and he would beg food stuff from different places, as we mentioned, doing adhikari. And he saw that there was some cowherd boys there. And one of the cowherd boys came to Sanatana Goswami, and he said to him, he said, "Baba," he said, "I want to go home with you. I want to go home with you." So Sanatan, he said, "Young boy," he said, "why do you want to go with me?" He said, "Yeah, what can I..." So he said, no, he said, "I want to stay where you live. If you stay with me, what will you eat? Your mother is taking care of you now. If you come and live with me, what will you eat?" And the boy said, "Sadhu, I will eat whatever you eat." And then Sanatan said, "But my dear child, all I eat is some dry chapatis and a handful of chickpeas." So then the boy says, "I will eat that also." So no, that won't be good enough for you. You go back to your mother and father. So in this way, Sanatan, just kind of explained the boy would be in difficulty. He continued on like that. Now, at this time, Sanatan would regularly go, as I mentioned, to these different places and beg. And there was one family, Damodar Chobe. Damodar Chobe was a very nice Brahmin family. And he and his wife's name was Balaba, his wife Balaba. And they had one son. And they had a deity that they had named Madan Mohan. Let me interrupt here. I'm getting something in the chat room, a clarification on a point here from my dear god brother. My dear godbrother Dhruva Maharaj Das, who is going to be speaking on the 4th of August is pointing out that the pastime of Jagadananda Pandit is a little bit different than what I've told it, in that he went to Vrindavan separately from Sanatana Goswami. So we'll take his clarification, since we're talking about devotees in Orissa, and Dhruva Maharaj has lived in Orissa for some 20 years. So thank you, Dhruva Prabhu. So at any rate, so we're back to Sanatan being in Vrindavan, and we're back to him going around Madhukari, and he would go to this home of this devotee Damodar Chobe, and Damodar's wife Balaba, and their little boy. And they had a deity, and the deity was known by the name Madan Mohan. And so Sanatan would notice that the family, that they would go, and he would see that they were just being very casual in their worship of the deity. That when Mother Balaba was ready to feed prasadam, she would sit the boy and the deity down and put plates in front of both of them. And that sometimes the son would frolic with the deity, playing games back and forth with him like this. So very, very casual. So in this way, Sanatana Goswami, he instructed, excuse me, my dear Damodar, my dear Mother Balaba, I should inform you, but this is not exactly the proper way to care for the Lord in his deity form. There are certain rules and regulations, and here they are. Because you remember, one of the primary activities that Sanatana Goswami was asked to do was to write books that would instruct devotees how to properly perform their devotional service. And specifically, he was famous for his book on how to properly worship the deities. So, in this way, he gave the instructions to Mother Balaba and to Damodar. You should worship the deity in this way and that way, and avoid this and avoid that. And so they tried, but they pointed out to Sanatana Goswami, that's just too much trouble. We can't do this. This isn't the mood we have. So, at any rate, it mentions that, he tried in this way, but then he saw just the loving sentiment that Mother Balaba and Damodar had for Madan Mohan. And he said, anyway, you continue to worship in his own mood. You continue to worship in your own mood like that. So, one night, Sanatana Goswami had a dream. And in this dream, Madan Mohan came to him. And he said, I want to come and stay with you. This is that little boy. He said, I want to come and stay with you and have you take care of me. I've been staying at Damodar's house for so long, now I want to come and stay with you. You go in the morning and tell Damodar this. So, in the morning, Sanatana Goswami gets up and he goes to Damodar's home and he says, my dear Damodar, last night Madan Mohan came to me in a dream. And he says that he would like to come and live with me and have me worship him. Damodar says, no, how can I give him to you? How can I possibly give away the Lord of our life? He is, he's like a son to me. Oh, I'm so sorry, but I can't do that. So Sanatan, he's not going to make a point of it. So he says, all right. So Damodar takes rest that night. And then in the evening, Damodar has a dream. And Madan Mohan comes to him. And he says, yes. He says, it's true. I have appeared to Sanatan and I'm appearing to you. I do desire to go and stay with Sanatan. You've served me so nicely all these years, but now I want to stay with Sanatan. He has come to Vrindavan for this purpose. So the next morning, it's arranged, Damodar and Balaba, they give the deity to Sanatana Goswami. And Sanatana Goswami builds a kind of a little shelter in a tree, and the deity stays there. Now, you remember when the little boy first approached Sanatana Goswami, said, I eat, dry chapatis and a couple of chickpeas. What, So this was how Sanatana Goswami would take care of Madan Mohan. He would make, not even really chapatis, just kind of like flat bread, throw it in the fire a little bit, and then offer it to the deity. And then he would take that prasad. So, as you remember, I spoke earlier that there are internal and external pastimes, and this is part of that internal pastime. So one day, the deity says to Sanatan, you're offering me these chapatis every day. They don't have any ghee on them. Maybe at least you could give me a little bit of salt. Just a little salt, that's all. Sanatana Goswami says to Madan, he says, today you want salt. Tomorrow you will ask for ghee. And then the day after that it'll be subjis. And then you'll want sweets. And then you'll want a temple. And then all of these things. And how will I get any writing done? Mahaprabhu has instructed me to writing. You want me to engage in all this service? So in this way there was this little debate. Now, of course, Krishna arranges things according to his own desire. And what happened was that there was one